and welcome to today's, well, I don't know what I did.
Video.
It's a video. Welcome to our video for this week. We are starting a new segment, which is something I'll do periodically, and we're calling it Parenting Perspective. It's just where we will kind of share with you our journey as we have become parents. And things that we are learning and things that we are discovering. And if you have questions about the way we parent and our ideas about things, then this is where we will answer those sorts of questions, which you can ask in the comments. Because this is a parenting segment, we have, of course, our babies with us. So please don't mind the beeping of their oxygen meters or the sucking of the binky. But today we are going to talk about how the NICU and having our babies in the NICU has changed our perspective on being parents. So just for a little background, for those of you who maybe don't follow our channel together, I gave birth to these little cuties about 6 weeks ago almost. It'll be 6 weeks on Wednesday, and they came about 2 months early. So they spent 5 weeks in the NICU. They've been home almost a week, and they are home on oxygen. So we are not as versed as some people, but very well versed in the goings-on of the NICU. So we just want to talk about how that changed our perspective on parenting.
I think first, it's important to say that there is no right way to be a parent, right? Everyone's experiences are different. So our experience is not set in stone for everyone, right? And I think that's where a lot of anxiety came from in the beginning, is we were told it's gonna be this way, prepare yourself. And it was almost a negative perspective of it, that people would come to us and be like, oh, you're gonna lose all this sleep. Oh, your babies are gonna just scream all the time. Oh, there's 2 of them, it's gonna be so hard.
I think that people tried to play the devil's advocate because they wanted us to be prepared. And so they figured if they warned us or prepared us for all the bad and negative things of parenthood, that it would prepare us better rather than sharing with us the joys of parenthood. So we did get a lot of, oh, you'll never sleep again. Oh, it's going to be so hard with 2 of them. Better you than me. I heard that a lot when people found out I was having twins. And I thought, yeah, if that's your attitude, yeah, better me than you, because I'm excited.
Now our philosophy on our vlogging channel is have courage and be kind. We end every video by saying have courage and be kind. And that's not to say that we were mean to these people who would tell us these things.
Usually we just nodded and smiled.
And sometimes that's having courage and being kind by not saying anything at all, right?
And with that in mind, we also want you to know that nothing we say in our parenting segment is to disagree or attack other people's parenting styles. This is just our personal perspective and philosophies. We also would ask that you extend that kindness to us, and if you disagree with us on something, feel free to ask us questions about it, but we would appreciate you not telling us we're wrong or anything like that, just because, like we said, it's different for everyone. Everyone's experiences are different.
Starting out with the birth of these 2 is the most amazing experience that I've ever had. And the instantaneous love that you have for a child when they're born is insane to me.
It's so overwhelming.
Because all of a sudden, you're a parent and you're just like crying emotionally, and you've never even met this human being until that moment. So that was amazing for me, and that changed my perspective on parenthood. In the half second that little Miss Ella popped out, little Miss Ella popped out, it was an emotional moment.
I think, yeah, it definitely changes your perspective on your own capacity to love, because it's not only is it a very overwhelming thing, but it was a different kind of love. It was a kind of love that I never felt before, and it really is an incredible thing.
And because you have that instantaneous love, the thing that changed my perspective, or the thing that gave me more of a perspective into parenthood, was the fact that they did have to go to the NICU within like 5 minutes of being born. Because they were 2 months early, they were having troubles with oxygen, and especially this one, like, she didn't breathe right away. She cried, she let out little cries here and there, but then she would just like
had the air.
Not breathe.
Yeah.
And so we got about 5 minutes with them, and then they took them away.
And we didn't even get the full 5 minutes with them. I got probably about a minute with Ella on my chest. They handed me Dallas, and they said Dallas has to go to the NICU to get help breathing. I got to hold her for maybe like 15 seconds and then they whisked her
Snapped
away.
a quick picture and they took them. And the instantaneous love that you felt was almost taken away instantaneously as well because you didn't have them.
It was replaced by a very deep kind of like sorrow,
Yeah.
I guess would be a good word. Like an emptiness.
Yeah, and we were never concerned really at all that our babies were going to the NICU because we knew, if anything, the NICU is the place to be to be taken care of and looked after.
We were very lucky because the only real concerns was developmental concerns. They were 2 months early, so their lungs hadn't developed all the way, which is why they needed help breathing. And just little things like that. So we weren't concerned. There were no real big issues that made us feel like we were never going to get to bring them home. So we were very blessed in that regards because we know that that isn't the case for everyone.
And that kind of brings us to the first point that kind of brought on this idea that I told Leisl that we should do, either on our channel or on hers, surprise, it's on hers, is that so many people, we just barely brought them home last week after a month of not having them at home with us. And the comments started rolling in again, oh, prepare to lose sleep, oh, it's gonna be so hard, prepare to never sleep again. But after a month of not having them, like this week has been the most amazing week ever because they were taken away the moment they were born and we just barely brought them home a month later.
And so it definitely gives you perspective is as far as like being able to have them at home. Are we getting less sleep than we used to? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I get woken up 2 or 3 times a night to feed. We get woken up several times with alarms going off because somebody's heart rate is too high or their oxygen rate is too low. And so, you know, we're constantly waking up in the middle of the night. And so, yeah, we're not getting a lot of super restful sleep. We maybe, if we're lucky, get 4 hours at a time, which is amazing for newborns. We don't care, I guess is what I would say. I love it. I love it.
Having them home overshadows the fact that we're losing sleep, that we're not getting the sleep that we used to. Because now we're a family, and that's all that matters.
And I would much rather have to wake up to feed my baby 5 times a night than sleep through the night and have to pack up my car and go to the NICU the next morning.
Yeah. That drive, we live about like 15 minutes away from the NICU.
15 or 20, yeah.
I would dread that drive every day because I spent a full day at work, starting at 8 in the morning. I would get home at like 6, and then I'd have to drive to the NICU and like not really be able to have one-on-one time with my children. That was the hardest part.
Yeah, and the time that you did get with them, like they have little curtains that they draw for us so that we kind of had some privacy, but there were always nurses popping in if anything went wrong, you know, if the alarms were going off there were so many cords everywhere, and there were kind of rules that we had to abide by. And I remember before they had their microflow cannulas, which they only got their microflow like a week before they came home, when they were on their high flow, I didn't feel like I could pick up my baby when I wanted.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to wait for the nurse to give me permission to pick up and hold my baby.
Yeah.
Because there was so much equipment, and I didn't know what their schedule, what they had planned, did the babies need shots or whatever.
Yeah.
And because, especially with the high flow, the tubing for the high flow was really kind of thick and heavy, and so I felt like they wanted to help me because they were afraid that, I don't know, I'd break something, which I did once, but, and so that was hard, and that changed my perspective in being grateful that even though they're home on oxygen and I literally can't take them anywhere without dragging at least another person with me to carry equipment, it's so nice to know that if they cry, I can pick them up, and I can hold them, and I can stand while I'm holding them, and I can rock them, and because in the NICU, they didn't want you standing while you held the babies. And especially with preemie babies, they encourage you not to rock or bounce them. They say that it's too overstimulating. And so your baby cries and your instinct is to pick them up and rock them, and I couldn't. I had to place my hand on their chest or grab hold of their hand to comfort them.
Yeah.
And so it's changed my perspective in the things, being grateful for the little things that I'm able to do at home with them. That I can pick them up when they cry, that I can cradle them against my chest and bounce them on my hip and just have those moments where I don't have to worry about breaking a rule or is this gonna cause problems for them or whatever.
And we talk about that instant love that you feel with a child because you become a parent, and then having your babies in the NICU almost feels like you aren't their parent and that you can't make decisions for them. But that's not to say we're not entirely grateful for our nurses and all of the people that helped our children get to this point, because if they weren't being watched over by these amazing nurses and doctors, they would not be home.
Obviously, we don't have the knowledge to make medical decisions for our preemie babies, but it is hard when your baby is in the NICU because you're not their primary caretaker.
And this is all about perspective, right? That's what this little segment is called. Our perspective changed when we became parents, but we weren't allowed to essentially be the parent right off the bat.
And so that kind of led into the way our perspective changed when we brought them home too, because having them in the NICU for 5 weeks, I knew I was their mom, but I didn't feel like a parent because I wasn't doing anything. I showed up 3 times a day to feed them. I mean, it was like having a pet, you know? I was pet sitting for someone. I showed up to feed the cat and then I go home kind of thing. I mean, it's obviously different because it's my children and I love them differently, but it was just weird because I knew I wasn't their primary caretaker and I was just there to, it was like I was there to provide a service, and then I went home.
Yeah.
And so my perspective changed when I brought them home as well, and we did become their primary caretakers. That changed our perspective as well on what the nurses did. I think it changed our perspective to be like, oh, and now we are doing what the nurses did. And it was good to be able to have that time where we watched the nurses, where we didn't have to worry about, because a lot of people, they bring their babies home right away and you just, it's kind of troubleshooting, you know.
Trial by fire.
And we got the opportunity to watch trained professionals help our babies grow. And so now we are able to put that into action. And so my perspective changed in that way as well.
And a lot of new parents, like these are our first children. We don't know what we're doing, right?
No clue.
A lot of first parents fall into that little trap of going to the hospital in labor, having a child, being so exhausted, and the next day bringing that newborn baby home and just being thrown out into the world. Where we had a month of preparation, and that changed my perspective on viewing other people and how they parent. Because yeah, we were exhausted just from being in the hospital. Like that alone, like going into labor, going into labor and having these 2 babies, plus she needed blood transfusions. Like we were wiped out. That was the least amount of sleep that we ever got in this whole experience.
Well, and with the blood transfusions, they sent me home because my hematocrit level was up, but it wasn't as high as it should have been. It was still low, and so I was still really weak. And so we were given the opportunity that someone else was taking care of our children, so we kind of had that opportunity to rejuvenate and heal from the experience, whereas other parents don't. And that definitely changed our perspective on why parents are so frazzled by newborns.
And it makes sense of why people say, prepare never to sleep again. You're gonna be so tired, it's gonna be so hard, because that is. We use the term lucky lightly because having them in the NICU for a month was the hardest thing that's ever happened to us, but we're a little lucky that we had a month further to prepare.
To get well rested again before we had to bring them home.
Yeah, we did.
So I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed. Obviously, when you become a parent, everything is different. And it does change your perspective, and there are lots of things that change your perspective. And you know, you think that you're ready for it, like you look at other parents and you're like, oh, I want to do that, oh, I don't want to do that. And then you become a parent and you almost kind of just like forget it all and just go with it.
Yeah.
You just have to go with what works for your children and for you. Because some people put their babies on a schedule. They feed them every 3 hours. That's what works for them. We don't. I wait for my babies to tell me they're hungry, and then I feed them, and that's what works for us. It all is about what you're comfortable with and what is best for you and your baby. And I think that my perspective changed on that, because in my mind, you know, there are right and wrong ways in certain areas, and if people would just do it properly, then the world would be a better place or whatever. But you know, we can't judge because everyone is different. All the babies are different, all the moms are different, all the combinations of parents and children are different.
Like my sister, for example, she had a colicky baby that would just scream and never latch and breastfeed, and they were up countless nights my mom, my grandma, her husband trying to help my little nephew eat anything, and that was a struggle for them. So
and like, I know that a lot of people with preemie babies, the thing people have a hardest time with, I have heard with preemie babies, is getting them to latch and breastfeeding with them. And we have actually been very fortunate because our girls latched very quickly and they breastfeed wonderfully.
We were the talk of the NICU that our babies breastfed so well.
Everyone was astounded at how much my babies ate. And they are not so great with bottles, but that's okay, you know? And so every situation is different. It's kind of like, I know that there's that whole weird debacle in the world where people are mom shaming for like how you feed your children and whether you're using formula or breast milk or whatever. And it's ridiculous because you have to do what works for you. And maybe someone's milk supply didn't come in, or maybe it's too painful for them and they can't, or maybe their baby won't latch, you know, and we don't know what's going on. And so again, we have to do what's right for us, but we have to remember that everyone else is doing what's right for them. And there are pros and cons to both sides. In fact, my doctor told me that he's encouraging us, we have to do fortified feeds with the girls. So they're getting my breast milk, but I have to add formula to it 3 or 4 times a day. And he said that nowadays they're saying that babies who receive fortified breast milk for longer do better academically. He said there's not a lot of like solid proof to back that up, but he says studies are starting to show that, which means babies who receive both breast milk and formula are doing really well. So obviously breast milk and formula both are doing good things in the world.
Did you know breast milk does not have vitamin D in it?
Or at least not, enough to really, because our babies had to receive vitamin D. And maybe it's because normal babies get to go outside and
NICU babies.
NICU babies don't, but we've got to put them on a multivitamin to get their vitamin D and their iron.
So I'm a firm believer that, fortifying gives them nutrients that is not found in breast milk. And breast milk gives them nutrients that is not found in formula. So.
But if you need formula, you need formula. Like if you can't breastfeed, you can't, and that's fine.
And that's fine. Don't be ashamed that you can't.
So this is turning into kind of like a weird rant, but the point is that our perspective changed and we realized that, or at least for me, that you can't mom shame other people, but you also can't mom shame yourself.
True. Because
you have to do what's right for you, and you can't feel like other people are judging you, because their judgment doesn't matter. What matters is that you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of your family. And that was one thing that I learned, because I definitely am the kind of person that is worried about what other people are thinking. And when I was pregnant, I would get really self-conscious about the comments people would make about my body, because I carry really far back, and so people were always very shocked and surprised by how small I was for carrying twins. And I was almost like embarrassed and upset by those comments, because I felt like they were telling me that I somehow was like being pregnant wrong, because they expected something different. And it changed my perspective on how I approach pregnant women now and the things that I say to them. And delivering the babies and having them in the NICU and having them be early has changed my perspective on how I approach other moms who have had NICU babies, or even moms in general. After birth, it has changed my perspective on the things that you say and do to a new mom.
All in all, perspectives are personal, right? Just like there's no one right way to parent, there's no one right perspective on how to be a parent or anything. So just because our perspective is this now doesn't make your perspective any less valid. So just remember that. We're all inclusive here.
We're just sharing our perspective, and it's kind of to document and for us to see how we grow through this journey of being parents and how our perspective changes. Because you go into something like parenthood with these ideas of, oh, these are going to be my rules, this is how I'm going to react to things, I'm never going to be this kind of parent, and then you have to adapt to the personality of your children. And to the situations at hand. And so perspectives, not only is there no right perspective, but perspectives change, which is part of why there is no right or wrong, because there's so many perspectives to be had.
I believe that.
So that is our first parenting perspective on being new parents and being NICU parents. Hopefully that was enjoyable for you. I know it was kind of just us talking at you for a long time.
But hey, you got to look at these cute babies for like 20 minutes.
So thanks for joining us. Before we go, I wanted to run an idea past my viewers. I'm toying with the idea of maybe doing a book club.
Book club!
on this channel.
How fun.
So just like maybe once every 3 months, like I'll assign a book and then we'll have like 2 or 3 months to read it, and then I'll have a video, maybe a live video where we can kind of discuss the book.
That sounds fun. I don't read.
And then of course you guys could give suggestions of books as well. But I just thought that might be kind of fun. So let me know what you think in the comments if you'd be interested in like a book club video every so often. And then if there's anything else you want to see. So thanks for joining us. We will see you next week.
Bye.